welcome those who are here, and some other people may join along the way. And I know a number of our chevra have said that they can't make it at this hour, but look forward to hopefully seeing video of this as we go along. So the goal here is for us to exchange some thoughts on Seder and Pesach in general for sermons and things to discuss. We had a get together like this about a year ago, and imagine right then it was a very novel thing. It was new, and it was Zoom, and it was I think we all hope that we wouldn't be in the same place for this Pesach, but I think we're all happy that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. But get-togethers like this and the ability to see each other from afar and share Torah with each other is a wonderful thing in general, and something that the pandemic has left us with a better idea of how to do and how to accomplish. So I think that's a good thing and worthy to take that piece of hope for the moment. I am going to invite Rabbi Weisblum, who was one of the primary people suggesting our get-together today, to play leadoff. And we'll kind of go around the Zoom room from there.
Thank you, Noah. I humbly think that there are more scholars than me. It's not anything to do with the scholarship or anything. I just suggested that in my 25 years, New York Board of Rabbis used to do that, and Morashah somehow used to do something like that. And over the years, I noticed that Joe Potasnik, in a way, just figured out that so much available on the internet. So we have a shiur from Rabbi Adam Mintz, but it wasn't a sermon seminar. And I felt strongly that all of our chaverim, since they have an opportunity to do the mitzvah of V'Higaleta, which is mitzvah min Torah, it's not rabbinic, and if we share ideas and things like that, will be very beneficial. So my little portion is two ideas. The first one is just some suggestions, and the second one is like mini midrash. The first one is a suggestion that this year, whatever we have can be just immediate family or friends, or it can be a Pesach with others, with sitting 6 feet away, or whatever the arrangement is. We should make the mitzvah of V'Higaleta by doing two things. Number one, follow the instruction on the airplane. And number two, V'Higaleta by making it more interactive. Instruction on the airplane. All of us, I'm sure, flew more than once in our lives, and you see the flight attendants standing there. No one pay attention, but what they are doing, they give us instruction. They said, in case of emergency, so something will be open right on the top, and you have a child next to you, or whatever you have around you, put the masks on your face first, and then place it on the person next to you. And I always said from the Shabbat HaGadol, or the week before Yom Tov, that parents and teachers, and for sure rabbis and educators, will put the mask on ourselves first, meaning educate ourselves, take the Agada, put on a piece of paper our theme, what exactly we want to accomplish with all the importance of the food, but what we really want to accomplish at Yom Tov for whoever is in contact with us. So right away we can fulfill the mitzvah of V'Higaleta. But the second one is the idea that I try to spread the wealth, meaning for 24 years I'm leading community Seder. Some years when I was in Maryland, we have once even 400, but usually we have between 150 to 250 people attend the Seder. And my goal was to take those years, I used to take children out for Agada, and I ask around people to just pick some part of the Agada and read And we try to do some interactive games for all different levels. But the key is to make every attendant feel part of the mitzvah. That's one component. And the second one is like Mother Midrash, and I'm going to forward to Noah. So if you want to post it or if colleagues want to use it, are welcome to do so. I call it Lel Shimurim. So the idea is I call it kind of Mother Midrash, and it's somehow past, present, and future. Because one of the name of Pesach in the Torah, it's called the Night of the Watch. Lel Shimurim Ula Hashem. And if you go back the time of our people, the Israelites, the children, about 3,500 years ago. So they at that time we tried to close our eyes and trace back to the time the Jewish people were in Egypt. They couldn't sleep the night of Exodus. They heard the commandments of the leader Moshe Rabbeinu, prepare for the Exodus, but they were restless. The children were afraid and thinking, Mom, Dad, how will we be able to walk so far, and what will be with food and water? Who will provide for us? Who will protect us from the evil and cruel Egyptians? How will we manage, and what will become of us? And the mothers came in and pat the children warmly on their foreheads, and they said, don't worry, tonight is Leil Chimurim, tonight is the night of the watch, and everything will be all right. And traveling on time, it was about 586 before Common Era. The nation of Israel went through so many trials and tribulations. And now there was a siege in the city of Yerushalayim, and the little children were crawling in the freezing cold, worrying about the future, saying, Mom, Dad, what is going to happen? And the mothers came in, pat the children warmly on the foreheads and said, don't worry, tonight is the night of the watch. Everything will be all right. Hundreds of years passed, and 1492, the night of the watch, came while the Jewish people were being very badly persecuted. Marco, a little child who was hiding in the floor against the holy order of the Inquisition, said to his parents, Mom, Dad, what is going to happen? And the mother pat her child warmly on her forehead and said, don't worry, Marco, tonight is the night of the watch. Everything will be all right. About another 150 years passed, and in 1648, the Jewish people of Poland were brutally massacred in the Cossacks riots in Rome, led by the horrible Bogdan Khmelnytsky. Rochale and Yankel, the children of the prominent village, hiding in a farm with the big fearful eyes, weeping tears, trembling, asked their parents, Mom, Dad, what is going to happen? And the mothers came in, had the children softly on the foreheads and said, don't worry, tonight is the night of the watch. Everything will be all right. Years pass by, and it was now 1944. There is a long line of people, men, women, and children, being ordered to get on a train in a small town in Hungary. They were told that they are going to travel to the east for work and can take very little belongings with them. They are hastily pushed into the animal freight train car. Conditions are not humane. Filthy, overcrowded, no windows, chaos food, no water, no lavatories. Some people do not make it and just lay on the car floor. The children cling to the parents, remembering how once they used to be a large family sitting together, saying the Haggadah with a sense of a real freedom, chanting the beautiful songs of hope. Now, with the blackened, fearful faces, despair in their eyes, with a broken voice, ask the parents, Mom, Dad, what is going to happen? And the mothers lovingly turned to them, pat the children softly on the foreheads, and said, don't worry, tonight is Leil Shimurim, tonight is the night of the watch, everything will be all right. We are now in the 21st century, sirens are going off frequently, warning people to run for a hiding place before the missiles attack Israel. These missiles cause severe damage if they make a direct hit and are deadly. Many people have been suffering from those horrifying attacks aimed at civilians at all hours of day and night. For weeks and weeks, schools, businesses, shopping centers, etc., have been closed, and tens of thousands of people have been living in fear in protective shelters under a siege. So on one Shabbat and one Saturday night, in the old communal shelter in a large city, the neighborhood children tried and go around to find an escape. They are so exhausted and frightened, ask the parents, Mommy, Daddy, Abba, Ima, what is going to happen? And the mothers looked at them with kind eyes, pat the children softly on the foreheads and said, don't worry, Lel Shimurim Ula Hashem, tonight is the night of the watch, everything will be all right. April 2020, a horrific pandemic is raging in the world. Everyone is isolated, locked in their homes, apart from their families and friends. Again, all the schools are closed, and there is a great trepidation in the air as the numbers of lost lives increase rapidly and in vast quantities. There seems to be no way to combat this new invisible enemy that goes and comes as it pleases. Communication is only by technology. Now, Kevin, who just turned 10 several weeks ago, and his 6-year-old sister, Judy, are restless, turning from side to side, finally running to the parents' room and ask them, Mommy, Daddy, what is going to happen? And the mother looks at them with calming eyes, pat the children softly on the foreheads and said, don't worry, tonight is the night of the watch. Everything will be all right. We are now close to the end of March 2021. Our world is still in a state of uncertainty. Shirley, Ian, Victoria, and Jacob, after experiencing quarantine for a long time while their parents are waiting for a second vaccine shot, ask them, Mom, Dad, what is going to happen? And the mothers look at them with the calming eyes, pat them softly on the foreheads, and said, don't worry, Lel Shimurimhu, tonight is the night of the watch. Everything will be all right. So that's basically the modern sermon, if you want to call modern midrash. And I forward to Noah if anyone wants to use it, they're welcome to do so. Thank you.
Rabbi Perlson?
Wow, what a burden. I didn't know I had to prepare. I thought I was going to just soak up all your guys' Torah. So let's think. I just saw something this morning that I thought I was going to try and create into a Devar Torah. I'm not exactly sure, but we know that Lechem Oni is poor man's bread. And it's supposed to remind us of a time when we didn't have anything. Lechem Oni means poor. We are poor. And in fact, that's one of the famous rabbinic explanations why we have yachatz, is because poor people never eat a full meal. If they have a piece of bread, they break it in half. They eat a half now, and they hide it away for later. So lechem oni refers to we're supposed to, when we eat the matzah, remember what we don't have. Now, it's very appropriate because when you think about what you don't have, that means something is missing. So, this year I'm going to tie it in, I think, to Yisker, actually, that, someone is missing. Someone's missing from the table. Someone's missing from our lives. Someone has passed away. But, you have to make a decision. How are you going to look at matzah? Because lechem, it could be lechem oni, or it could be lechem shonim alav harbeh. It could be either a symbol of negative or a symbol of positive. So even though a person is no longer with us, that doesn't mean that they cannot have a positive effect on our lives. And, it's sort of like I often teach concepts of logotherapy. Viktor Frankl, it's just that, is the cup half full? Is the the pessimist sees it half empty. The optimist sees it half full. A person who studies logotherapy says, who cares if it's half empty or half full? Fill it up and keep on going on with your life. So what it's half empty. Appreciate what you have and move on. So Yisker can be that concept of lechem oni. Make up your mind. How are you going to look at the matzah? Is it a negative thing or is it a positive thing? And no matter how bad things are, we might still be isolated. We may not have friends and family at our table, but we still are at our table and we're still serving and celebrating Seder. So that's just one idea that I had. One of the other things I saw is from Divrei Torah, Yonah Berman coordinated, Rabbi Berman coordinated all the alumni from the shul in New Haven, Connecticut, that's associated with the yeshiva. So there was a great Divrei Torah. Unfortunately, I forgot to write down. I'm gonna have to go back and get the source because I always try to do b'shem omro. So the question is, when does the story? We're supposed to say, you're supposed to start telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, Yechol Me'Rosh Chodesh. The real question is, so when does the Passover story begin? And when does it end? So for example, do you have to start telling from when Avram was told to break Bein HaBitarim that we're going to be slaves? Is that when the story of slavery begins? Does it begin when Yosef goes down into Egypt? Does it begin when Yaakov comes down into Egypt? Does it begin when we become slaves? Does the real slavery begin when Pharaoh refuses to give us straw? When does the slavery begin? The next question is, when does the slavery end? Does it end Pesach night with the death of the firstborn? Does it end with Yetziat Mitzrayim at Yam Suf? Does it end actually? There's one Man D'Amar that says that it actually occurs when we see the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Why? Because then we know they're dead. And there's, if you ever talk to a person who's ever undergone a sexual assault, and unfortunately, I over my many years, I've unfortunately had that unfortunate responsibility. They live in fear that person is still out there. Unless they've been caught and put in jail, they actually have a fear, no matter if they change cities. And that's actually happened. I've had to counsel 2 women. And the point is that they always have this fear that, that person is watching them, they're coming to get them, it's going to happen again. So when Bnei Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore of the Red Sea, is that when it was over? Or was the slavery over at Mount Sinai? So this Chaver, and again, I think it was Rabbi Belsky, but I'm not 100% sure. I know, but he basically said no, that every year the Haggadah is a living document, and every year we add to it, because slavery is not over until Mashiach comes. Every year the story is a continuous one, and every year there are people who are burdened with pain and suffering in the darkness of individual slaveries. Many of us feel like we were enslaved this year, that we were stuck at home and we couldn't go out, and we didn't have freedom of choice to do what we wanted. And isn't that what slavery is? That you're compelled to do what an overbearing power wants. Let's say, call it COVID-19 is the master. We couldn't go out. We couldn't do this. We had to be careful. We had to eat in certain ways. We didn't have freedom. We were enslaved. So the story continues. The Haggadah is a living document, and that the true salvation comes, like we say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuyah, when Mashiach comes. That's when the slavery is truly over, and that we have to fight against the slaveries that occur in everyday life. What kind of slaveries occur in everyday life? Look, I bet you, I'm looking around, I bet you every one of you have had to work with members who are suffering from an addiction. This is 2021. I must have 20 members of my shul that are in recovery. Yeah, I haven't had a drink in 12 years. I haven't touched drugs in 35 years, but they still are addicts, no matter how long it's been. So that's a form of slavery. They were addicted, enslaved by their drugs. Everyone has addictions. Everyone has problems. Everyone has a period of darkness. So when does that end? When we fight and persevere and live through the traumas of everyday life to make sure that we help bring Viat HaMashiach. And that's why the Seder ends, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuyah. May we be worthy to help bring about the coming of the Mashiach, So real darkness ends.
Eshel Koach, really beautiful thought. Really excellent. Appreciate it. Stephen, Rabbi Sachs, I see you on my participant list, but without video and audio. Are you available to share some thoughts?
So I was listening to this lecture series from the Tikva Fund by Professor Michael Goodman about Devarim, and he makes an interesting point. Is he's talking about Devarim, of course, and how it affects or ties into Sefer Malachim. We all know the historical tie-in and the scholarly theories as well. That's not really the point. The point is he talks about Devarim as. So I'm losing my train of thought. I'm still kind of catching my breath a little bit here. So he poses the question regarding Sefer Malachim. Why is it that King Yoshiyahu is considered the most pious king? The Sefer Malachim itself says he turns to God with all his heart, all soul, and all his might. So why is it that when he goes to battle the Egyptians in 609, he's killed by the Egyptians? He's the guy who goes about the major reform of it, full to war against idolatry. It should all be noted he's the one who really seems to reinstitute the observance of Pesach, which is kind of hard to believe. But if you remember, he says that, or it says since he celebrated it, it hadn't really been celebrated since the days of Yehoshua. So he's reinstituting it. So the idea seems to be that he believes by celebrating Pesach and turning the nation back to God, they're going to be protected and he's going to be victorious over the Egyptians in combat. By the way, all the Egyptians wanted to do is basically use that area, the Levant, as a land bridge to go to war in Mesopotamia, but he doesn't want them going through, so they kill him at the Megiddo Pass where they tried to cross. So the question is, why is he killed, being that he's such a righteous guy? Why doesn't God protect him? So what Professor Michael Goodman suggests is that if you juxtapose Yoshiyahu to Moshe, we see a big difference. What does Moshe do? He comes down, he brings down the luchot, he brings down the tablets, and he talks about Shabbat, and you rest, and you get your servants get to rest. But it really focuses in Exodus and Shemot on you getting to rest. That's the emphasis of the fourth command. But then when we go right to the next chapter, to Parshat Mishpatim, what is Moshe talking about now? He's talking on behalf of God. What is he talking about? He's talking about not only do you rest, but you can let your slaves rest as well. And then when Moshe recaps in Devarim, when you look at the fourth command for Shabbat, it emphasizes that the emphasis really is on letting others rest as well. So the point he was really making is Pesach and Shabbat aren't simply about you being liberated. When you, just as God liberated us and let us rest, when he emphasizes this in the Exodus version of the commandments, now our job is to liberate others by letting them rest, which Moshe emphasizes in the Devarim version of it. So the point really is, if you want to be B'Tselem Elohim, act in that manner, B'Tselem Elohim, act in that manner, what you should be doing is not saying, since I'm observing the mitzvot, God will protect me. That was Yoshiyahu's mistake. Rather, we should take the approach that Moshe took, is just as God is a force for liberating and doing good to others, that's going to be my job as well. So I think that's going to be my Shabbat Hagadol talk, being that I'll tie that into Shabbat and Pesach as well. All right, thank you. Thank you, Moshe. I have a fan club of one.
Oh yeah.
Baruch Tehiyah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Very nice thought.
Beautiful.
Noah,
Yes.
I have to apologize for the setting. I'm basically outside of a highway, but I do have about 5 or 6 minutes for an outline of a shir or a drasha that we take a half hour. But if anyone is interested, I could give you a rough outline of what I've done for a number of years. I would say success for Pesach. Unless there's someone else who wants to make a presentation at this point.
No, please go ahead.
And I also apologize for not having an earphone. and I hope the back noise is not be too annoying.
Okay.
Speak up. All right, so B'Kitzur Nimratz, what I've done in the past is 4 questions on the 4 questions. Why 4? Why 4? Maybe actually, if you look at the Maxwell House Haggadah, Ma'anishtana halayla zeh mikol haleilot, with a question mark is followed by 4 questions, so maybe it should be 5 questions. Question number 2, because remember again the outline, 4 questions on 4 questions. Why these questions? Why dafka these questions? And either the Abarbanel or basically if you just take 2 or 3 minutes of reflection, I bet you can come up with at least 4 more questions. I mean, just to give you one quick example is, well, why are we wash hands, but we don't say, you know, which actually, and then which leads to the 3rd question. If you're going to choose these questions and no less and no more, then why these specific questions? Why are they out of order? That would be question number 3. If you study the Shabbat Leilot, etc., what's the order? It's matzah, and then it's maror, and then it's matbilin, shtei pamim, and then it's haseva. But that's not the order in which we actually proceed on the Seder night. And isn't Seder all about Seder, doing things keseder in order? So that was question 3 out of order. First question, why 4, not 5? Question number 2, why these particular questions? It could be more. Why are they out of order? And almost something that Elliot mentioned in connection with Viktor Frankl about the glass being half empty, half full. I mean, why the questions at all? I mean, we know superficially the answer, to keep the children, that they should be curious or whatever. And actually they should be curious, because the answer is that sometimes curiosity is not expressed with questions. And here's the answer, basically, one answer to all of the 4 questions on the 4 questions. That how many questions are there? There are 0 questions, because most of us know that Manishtana halayla hazeh is not, why is this night different than all other nights? But we know really it's like ma nora hamakom hazeh. It's otherwise it would be lama, right? Sorry to be talking to like 4th graders, but we realize, most of us, that ma nishtana halayla hazeh is not so much why, it's a wow. Like Yaakov Avinu, ma nora hamakom hazeh, ein zeh ki en beit elokim v'zeh shara shemaim, ma nishtana halayla hazeh. And again, it's 0 questions, but in what specific way, what general question, what general sense of awe, which is somehow strange, because awe doesn't have to be awful, it could be awesome, but it's still somewhat strange to ask or to wonder why it is, or how this is so different. It's a different kind of thing, and it's going to take a long time to figure it out. And a snappy answer, anyone knows, anyone who goes to yeshiva, and even the kids who memorize the answers to the questions, even in Yiddish, Hebrew, whatever. How long does the answers to the take? 12 seconds, 2 minutes? It takes maybe half a lifetime, but it'll certainly take almost a whole night to figure out Manish Tanah Halayla Hazeh, when we figure the order, the very set order in the 4 quote unquote questions is a process that is transformative. You know, B'Kitzur Nimratz, when you take questions number 1 and 2, followed by 3 and 4, you realize that we are moving me'avdut lecheirut. First 2 questions, matzah, moror. But maror, there's no real, downside. But matzah can be confused. There are two kinds of matzah. And when we're ready to make the matzah to start the meal, it's not lechem oni. But when we prepare, when we begin, before we break the matzah, before we make the motzi and the matzah, before we eat the maror, we understand with the kaholach ma'anya, yes, matzah can be the matzah of the freedom bread, b'chipazon, but now we're going to focus in on what we want to focus at this point in the Seder, which is lechem oni. And then, so why? How do we basically get from an experience, from a mindset that is avodim hayinu? I mean, and now we're supposed to recreate, maybe down to the 49th level of the tumba, whatever the depths of depression and slavery and oppression, etc. And that's followed, and we double down and go even deeper to the next what thing we wonder about, which is maror. The first two questions representing, matchilin bignut, the shame, whether it's spiritual, whether historical, actually physical. Avodim hayinu lefaro b'Mitzrayim, followed by the next two, quote unquote, questions, deals, of course, with marks and simonim of cherut, such as matbilin. Okay, we have a dip. Forget about the Seinfeld with the double dip. Double dips is a mark of a smorgasbord where rich people, not only have a variety of dips, but they also lean, almost in an in a Roman sort of fashion of banquet. So they're dipping and they're leaning as free men. So basically, again, to touch upon the point that that Elliot touched upon, the logotherapy and the glass half empty, half full. I mean, what's it all about? Why are we even? How do we move? Me'avdut lecherut, matchilin biknut, u'misayim b'shvach, and that's going to take at least a half hour, if not half a lifetime, to get to that point. Once we do get to that point, then we begin, when we start with something that even precedes Avodim Hayinu, that sets the four questions in its proper perspective. Kehalach ma'anya, setting the stage that will eventually lead to Ga'al Yisrael and the hallelujah that follows. That's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Ashakach.
I think I'm going to share a couple of thoughts, if I may. First, that we've had a couple of mentions of the glass half full and glass half empty, and that I like the answer that comes not from the optimist or the pessimist, but from the engineer who sees the glass as twice as big as it needed to be. So that's just a different way of looking at it. Continuing a little bit on the theme of the transition from Avdut Lecherut, this is something I shared in an email to Morashah last year, and I think is worth thinking about, is the idea, as we mentioned, that matzah has this transition. It starts off as halach ma'anya, the matzah that we break and speak to as poor bread, but it comes to Rabban Gamliel, who sees the matzah as the bread of freedom, the bread that we made as we were going out of Egypt. And JPS in that regard points out that the common element between the two is a rush, that the slave doesn't have the time or the resources to make matzah, but we as free people were in a rush as well, and therefore made that matzah. And in a way, I think it tells us that freedom is sometimes about the freedom to do what? We say there's the bracha that talks about how everyone's in a rush, but anu amelim umekablim schar. We toil and we receive reward for that toil, and that ultimately freedom is the freedom to is to take our time to do things that are to our own benefit and to the benefit of others, and to follow in God's Torah. So that's one quick thought I wanted to share. Another quick kind of I thought it was an interesting way of looking at it. I think that I picked up also from JPS, the idea that the 5 rabbis who are learning in Bnei Brak and are speaking of Yetziat Mitzrayim, that perhaps what they are doing is planning the Bar Kokhba revolt. Rabbi Akiva is among the group. And one wonders if their Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim is code for discussing their own plans for liberation. I don't know that there's any real solid proof for that, but I think it's just an interesting speculation to think about. And in which case, I kind of wonder if the students coming to say that Higi Zman Shel Kriyat Shema is code for the Romans are coming. But that's my own little chop of possibility, fun to think about. I don't have a smoking gun to prove that.
So if I could just add on to that, Noah. So I've heard that theory as well too, and it's certainly possible. I mentioned that the other day, and as I was mentioning it, it was strange. I was saying it, talking about they probably saw this as their Yetziat Mitzrayim during the Bar Kokhba revolt, but then you have to at least reconcile the fact that the Bar Kokhba revolt, unlike Yetziat Mitzrayim, ended in an absolute fiasco. So I was tripping over my own words as I was trying to use that same comparison. So just think about that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, I think I saw it in the Sachs Haggadah, Jonathan Sachs Haggadah. I forgot who's arguing with who, but he looks at it differently as a machloket between, do you have to finish via Tzipor Yetziat Mitzrayim before Chatzot or not? And basically, I think it's Rabbi Akiva says, and one of the others says you don't. And what they simply do is they simply, instead of trying to argue whether we should stop telling it at Chatzot, they get the other people who say you have to stop at Chatzot so excited about it, they simply wind up going to dawn by accident. So he's making the point, one of the best ways to get people to excited about doing a mitzvah, continuing to do it, is just get them involved in it instead of trying to convince them otherwise.
Yeah, Rabbi Sachs in that also identified the year in which that happened was the year in which Elazar ben Azariah had been appointed the Nasi before he.
Yeah, that's, I forgot that part, but now that you mention it, he ties that in. Absolutely.
He brought in the theory that it was, around the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, as the theory that Cecil Roth put forward, but he pretty well, Sachs rejected it.
Right.
This other reading where it's Elazar ben Azariah was the one with the couch in the middle of the banquet, and he got these 2 groups of Chachamim who had this dispute over whether you had to end the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim by midnight or not. To basically keep going all morning.
Yeah, what I love about that, Vignette, thank you, Len, for filling in the parts I forgot. But what I love about that little vignette is you have like 2 totally different sermons that are wonderful sermons. The first take that Noah mentioned, and then also the Sachs take as well, both make for different sermons, but both wonderful sermons.
Yeah, by the way, I also like in a certain way the idea that if we take Higi Zman Shel Kriyat Shema to be literally, that perhaps it suggests that if they were indeed planning revolt, they were also still taking the time to upkeep their spiritual responsibilities, etc. So I think that's an interesting idea too. I have two little pieces of discussion to share. Don't know that I have too much to say about them, but I think they're interesting. Both come from commentaries I found in Haggadah Shlema, and I'm sharing my screen so you can see them. One is comment from Chukat HaPesach, which I looked at the list at the end, and there's several Chukot HaPesach that he mentions as authors, so I'm not sure which one this is offhand. But this points out that with regards to the question that we see as the question of the Rasha, of the difficult child, that it says, Ki yomaru aleichem b'neichem, when your children say to you, and not ki yishalcha, which the other two children who speak and ask questions, and if I scroll down a little bit, you see the verses from Shmot and Dvarim. So you have ki yishalcha bincha in Dvarim and ki yishalcha bincha, and here it's behaya ki yomaru, and he says, Shma mina deben Rasha hakatuv medaber she'eno shoel lidat tochen hadvarim va'amitutan ela ba lehachshich v'lechor hakol. So that the fact that it uses the word yomeru, the person is speaking, is saying, rather than asking, suggests the intent of the Rasha. And I think that's something to always keep in mind when we ask questions, when we wonder about things. To what extent are we genuinely asking a question, or are we trying to drive to a certain place? And obviously, we always want to be open and looking genuinely for answers. And similarly, hopefully, we sometimes have to evaluate when not only children, but adults ask questions, what is the agenda? And hopefully to direct the agenda towards genuine inquiry, growth, and learning. And that's, of course, what we want to do during the Seder. So that's one thought I had based on that little piece. And I thought it was an interesting observation of the difference between Yomeru and Yishalcha, and really the difference of how we ask questions. The other very interesting comment I saw, which I still don't know necessarily what to make of, either intellectually or homiletically, but it just interests me in. So we're told, all who speak more and say more about our departure from Egypt, all the better. And this particular comment suggests that maybe it ain't necessarily so. That it explains that that saying that speaking more about Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim is fine, but as opposed to, say, speaking about the divine attributes, where depending on exactly how you look at it, there are limits to how much we should say in God's praise. And Kasher points us toward the Gemara in Brachot, where someone is davening before Rabbi Hanina and starts to say Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor B'Hanara and Hadir, and he just goes on from there with more and more praise of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and Rabbi Hanina basically says, know that you can never speak all of God's praises, and therefore, were it not that Moshe Rabbeinu used Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor B'Hanara, we wouldn't even do that. And I also here add in the text in the Gemara in Megillah, also talking about the Amida, and saying, once you get through the 19 blessings, that's it. And the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, that one who speaks of the praise of God too much is lifted from this world. So that there are limits to how much praise we should give to God, at least in some context. Kasher points us towards Beit Yosef, and I have Torah here also, but that there are debates as to whether this applies only to the Amidah or in general, and even in Beit Yosef, there's a mention of Rabbi Yonah, who suggests that it might even go to speaking about even what miracles God has performed. That might even be a concern, and it depends on, there's different opinions there. I just thought I don't necessarily have a point, and I wonder if others have some intellectual, homiletical points that they think might be interested about this. But I just, I've always taken how that, telling more of the story is Haresh and Mishbach is an obvious point. And I thought it was interesting to see that that maybe it isn't that obvious, and maybe there can be limits. And then to ask, if that's the case, or is there a reason why telling stories and telling of God's miracles might be different than speaking of God's praise, perhaps because there's kind of a context that it's speaking of deeds and not of God's nature and things like that. So I don't know, just something I've been bouncing around in my head for a bit, and I don't know if anyone has any counter thoughts to that, but otherwise I'll yield the floor. Rabbi Levy.
I don't have anything to respond to that, although I think it's nice to understand Harez and Mishubah, the idea of telling God's praises, Harez and Mishubach in the Seder. I'd like to connect that with a teaching in the Tosefta Kifshuta of Hagon Rav Shaul Lieberman, whose 38th yard site is today. Right, which is that he talks about the psukim in Hallel, that there's a dispute in the 10th parak of the Tosefta of Psachim. The 9th halacha, Rabbi Lezer ben Parta haya koshet bo dvarim, Rebbe haya kofel bo dvarim. So Rabbi Yoshuv ben Parta would say some psukim straightforward, and Rebbe used to double them. So what was doubled and why? So he says that originally the psukim that were doubled were Hodu Hashem Kitov Ki Le'olam Kasto and Ana Hashem Hoshiana Ana Hashem Hoshiana, and they're doubled because they're kilusim. They are praises, right? So the special praises get doubled. That was Rebbe's opinion. Rabbi Yeshua ben Parta didn't do that. And he connects that with in Masechet Sukkah, they would go around on Hoshana Rabbah, they would go around the Mizbeach and say, Yofi L'cha Mizbeach, Yofi L'cha Mizbeach, right? So why did they repeat it twice? Because it's a kilus, because it's a praise. So the idea is that when we praise, we double. So Harez and Mishubach, don't just say it once, double it. And then the Bavli gets this a little different than the Tosefta. Rav Lieberman points out that in the Bavli it says Tana Rabbi Kofel Badvarim Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta Mosif Badvarim, that it wasn't that he that he did it straight, but that he added things. What did he add? Amar Abaye Mosif Lichpol Me Odecha Ulamata. He added that not only would you double Ana Hashem Oshiana and Hodu Hashem Kitov, got that backwards, but he also started from Odcha ki ani tani and doubled every verse all the way down to the end of Psalm 118. And that's the custom that we took on, was that custom through the Bafli. So Hareza Mishubach, to double our praises of Hashem regarding Yitziat Mitzrayim, regarding everything else. Last night when I was going through my Shnai Mikra V'Achad Targum, I came across the pasuk. Where is it? Here we go. It's Perek Zayin, pasuk Yud Gimel, al chalot lechem chametz yakriv korbano al zevach todat shlamav. Right, so on chalot of chametz bread, one should offer up his korban. On the sacrifice of the todah of his shlamim. Right, so this is the todah offering. The Ha'amek Davar on that says, Mashmut HaMikra de Tachlit HaKorban Hu Chalot Lechem Chametz. The main purpose of the whole Todah offering is the Chametz bread. And that's why they interpret this Mikra al Zevach Todah Shlamav, Mishum Hachi Lechem Chametz Hu Ikar, Mishum Shu Zevach Todah Shlamav. Right, this is the lechem chametz is the ikar, it is the zevach todat shlamav, and the idea is that tachlit todah sheba'al hanes, right? The purpose of the todah is that it comes for a miracle that was done for the person, and we're thanking God for that miracle. Kedei l'saper chasdei Hashem shegamala. We should tell widely the great wonderful kindnesses that Hashem did for us. Umitam ze riva katuv b'lechem. And this is why the psukim regarding the Zevach Todah say that we've got to have a lot of bread, right? We have 30 loaves of matzah of 3 different types and 10 loaves of chametz bread. 4 of which one of each goes to the Kohen, so 4 loaves go to the Kohen, right? And the rest of them, you've got to eat the Todah within, up until morning, the same as Korban Pesach. It only goes, Anotar B'Boker B'Eshi Saref. Right, so in order to be able to eat all this stuff before morning, you've got to invite a lot of people, and in front of all those people, you're going to be telling them the story. So this is, you've got to spread the story widely. V'im kein ha'ikar achila hu lechem chametz, right? And the main eating is the chametz bread out of those 9 loaves of chametz that are left, rather than the 36 loaves of. 27 loaves of challah that are left. Right? Why is that? Because matzah hu lechem oni. Matzah is the bread of poverty. Ve'no ne'achal yafeh. And it really isn't eaten all that well. Yeah, it's not as pleasant. Kamo chametz. It's not, chametz. It's just a lot more pleasant to eat chametz bread. Look, I like eating matzah all year long, but I'm weird, I guess. Okay. I didn't look up the Tosafot Zvachim in Daf Amud Hey, Amud Bet, Dibur Amatkel Shvi'it. V'hainu de Messiah Tam Shalechem Chametz Ikar Mishum Shu Zevach Todat Shlamav Toda Al Shlomo V'ma Shenechlatz Mitzara. Right, it's Todah for the shalom that came to him from being saved from the tzara. That's what Todat Shlamav is. So we're offering Todah. So the question is, if we're full of Todah to Hashem for bringing us out of Egypt, why is it that we're doing it on matzah and not on chametz if Todah is on chametz? I'm still thinking this out. So if people have other ideas, let me know. But what I've thought of is that we do the Lechem Chametz on Shavuot. And Shavuot is really the completion of Yitziat Mitzrayim. When we come to Har Sinai and accept Torah, that's really when the process ends. That's when we get the freedom for, not just the freedom from slavery. The freedom from slavery is Geula, and Lechem Oni is also referred to in the Mishnah as Mishum Sheni Galu, is why we use the matzah. So being in the process of Geula is not being at the point where one can offer yet Todah for when it's over. Being in the process, we still need the Lechem Oni, and we're not ready to offer the Todah. The Todah comes when we're actually at Har Sinai. And before leaving off for comments on that, I just want to add that last year, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs had a wonderful shiur that he gave to Hillel International on the hidden fifths, it's called. So if you search the internet and find that, it's, we've got all these fours in the Haggadah: 4 cups of wine, 4 Lashonot of Geula, 4 questions, 4 sons, 4, all of the fours. He said there's a hidden fifth to all of the fours. He's got great sources. Great short source sheet on Sefaria, which is, if you look in the notes on the YouTube video, you'll find the link to the Sefaria source sheet. Really good stuff there.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Levy.
You were looking puzzled there for a minute, Noah. Did I say something that didn't
No.
make sense?
No, I was looking puzzled at my computer.
Okay.
I was starting to think about the question you had asked about why, why celebrate on matzah if that's not the full, full tool of celebration. I suppose that there is.
I should also add that the Korban Mincha cannot be chametz, right? Korban Mincha has to be from matzot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it might just be, you had to have matzah for Pesach for other reasons. So, maybe it's just in perfect balance. I do like the idea that apparently the idea of leavening in some way was originated with the Egyptians. And so that eating matzah is particularly an anti-Egypt message as well. It's an interesting question. Anyone have other comments on that? Okay. Let me then thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Rabbi Weisblum, for encouraging us to get together. And
Wishing you.
look forward to doing this in future years with everyone. Let me,
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova to everyone.